Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and any items that may or may not be exported to or from China, and whatever tariffs might be attached to them. Loaded up for discussion today, we have China halting the shipments of several rare earth minerals to the US, and Trump and Lutnick casting doubt on the various tariff exemptions that were announced on Friday. Markets seem to be holding up though, even though there's some more doubt now. We'll dive into all of that and more in a bit. We've got the mantra L1 for RWAs down 80% in one day. Team blaming the reckless forced closures initiated by centralized exchanges. That is a quote. Maybe we have some other explanations for what may have been going on. We'll explain why that's down 80 to 90%. And also on the NFT side, Zoo Pepen set by Jack Butcher rose to a 2.4 ETH floor. Very excellent use of creation of a non-fungible, or ensuring non-fungibility in a non-fungible collection. Way more popular than the ordinary OPEPens. Interesting to see. We'll explain why that people have thought that's so valuable in just a little bit too. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs as usual, plus a general discussion with the boys, being today Legendary in the co-host seat with Bread Guy. We're ready to get into it. Just a reminder, friends, though, we do not know anything for sure. This market is exceptionally risky. This is not financial advice. Exercise your own judgment, proceed with caution, and maybe even do a little bit of research. With that out of the way, Legendary, it's Monday. It is the 14th of April. How are you doing?
GM, doing quite well. It's been a good weekend. The market is weird. The market is up. There's good things. There's bad things happening. I don't really understand what's going on, but I'll try my best to break it down a bit later in the show. But I'm excited for Dubai. I have booked my flights and hotel as well. That will be a fun one, given the fact that I decided to skip last time around. So it's going to be my first token 2049 actually.
Good stuff. Are we going the key one on Dubai, or any conference actually? For God knows how many we've been to now. We've been in the space for a few years. We did maybe go to the conferences themselves a bit at the beginning. Then once you get to know a few people, you kind of think, no need to go to the conference. Let's just do all the side events. For the first time in a long time, I want you to interpret this, Legendary. Why is it? What does it mean? The fact it's the first time in a long time that as a founder, I kind of want to go to the conference. Is there anything to read into that?
Yeah, it's a bear market if you want to go to the actual main event, I think. Can't be a good sign, can't be a bullish sign.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, so we're adding that to the list of bear market indicators. We've got we've got exercise, we've got attending actual conferences, and we have suits. People wearing a lot of suits. Bread. Any other bear market indicators for you that we should be adding to this list? We've got a bunch here.
Well, for me, it's given this weekend, it's the amount of people that latch on to my farmers market style life posts over the weekend. I posted.
You've been like vibe coding and going to farmers markets, so that's an indicator to me.
Yeah, so I'm actually, it's going to start an arc for me. I've decided, because I literally was walking around the farmers market this weekend, and I took pictures of, like, someone had a bunch of bread things, like there's a little bread plate, had some bread stickers and stuff. So I was like, I just took pictures of them. I was like, yeah, I opened up my stand, like, guys, come say hi, like, whatever. And I am surprised by the amount of people who think I am so dug into bread as a identity that, like, I'm setting up a bread, like a bread clay thing on the weekends as a farmer's market. So through the power of AI, bringing that background to everything else, I realized I can be bread anything. And every weekend, I think I'm going to lean into it and generate some bread images and just be like, oh, I'm doing bread mountain climbing, and show these like little bread hooks that I created and I'm stuck in the side of this mountain that I'm going to do this thing. Or, oh, I'm going bread hot air ballooning and have on my way to work, and see how far I could take it until people realize, like, hey, maybe literally everything surrounding this person is not bread and or bread adjacent.
See, okay, so it's going to set up a whole arc for you.
Yes.
And maybe, okay, that's interesting. When you get back to the real business, we'll know, because this is going to have to stop at some point. Or maybe it won't. With all these AI capabilities,
you interleave, right? So like now I don't have to spend a disproportionate amount of time doing that stuff. Going to ChatGPT, generate an image, think of some ideas. Next thing you know it, you're like, because I was getting in arguments all weekend, right? Like I was posting shit about like DEX volumes and shit. So people from Avalanche were going buck wild on top of it because it was one of their L1s that was popping off relative to Abstract. Abstract people were mad because I was talking about Abstract, So yeah, I was getting everywhere. So you just kind of just like sprinkle in some bread topics on top of the arguments.
Beautiful. Sounds like a real art form. Okay, so that is going on. I'm glad you brought up the AI stuff, because I think one thing that's been helpful about listening to the show the last week or 2 or 3 is the proficiency that you guys in particular have had when it comes to like exploring and experimenting with the latest stuff. So I think as we are creating all the time on the timeline, and as a lot of our listeners are also just like, exceptionally entrepreneurial, figuring out how to leverage this stuff as much as possible, I think will become a good hub for sharing some of those learnings, how we are like really leveraging the tech in order to 10x or 100x ourselves, and produce more and produce better. So I think that will be helpful.
I actually did my first investment outside of crypto into an AI company that has nothing to do with crypto. And B, I typically don't listen to other podcasts, interviews, but I did listen to, when I went for a run on the weekend, I did listen to an interview with the founder and his AI company running data analytics on DNA, on your DNA, basically, if you have like a sequenced genome file. And as part of the interview, I learned that the round is still open. So I had a chat with the founder over the weekend and decided to invest there. Take that as a bull or bear market signal.
Honestly, like that. So I did a post about that too, because like even myself, who I haven't seeded a bunch of projects, but for people on the outside, it seems it's such a foreign thing, and like how to get started, how to do whatever. For my first few, I found out you literally just ask. You literally just reach out and say like, "Hey, I want to give you money," and people are surprisingly receptive to that.
I was actually surprised by that as well. I literally did write an email. I was like, "Hey, I heard on this interview with that you guys are raising. I would like to join the round if the terms are interesting." Immediately got a call and was like, "Okay, cool, let's do this."
Nice. Yeah,
Who would have
same
thought?
thing in crypto. Yeah, I did a tweet. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago? Because Noise, like one of the projects on Meggy, kind of on testnet, people were starting to tweet about it, and someone ICO specifically just like did an offhand comment to a tweet by Jonah. I was just like, they should have asked me to Angel, and the founder just replied, "Is like, yeah, we could change that. You want Angel?" And then I was just like, took a picture of that exchange. I was like, this is literally it. Like you just say, I want to do this. And typically then you get the chance to do this. This whole like voicing your intentions thing.
100%. We do it all the time. Sometimes we just pre-announce things on the show and then have people message us as well, to kind of help, because people, if you align with people in some way, you do get a sense that people want to see you succeed as well. People want to push you towards the goals, and if it lines up with someone, perfect. Good stuff. So that's a nice thing to be able to focus on too. Let's get into the main stuff as usual, though. I've got a lot to talk about today. Some very interesting headlines, but starting with the price action first, as usual, with the big Bitcoin, not to be confused with big coin. Bitcoin is flat, 84.7K. It's up 12% on the week, though. ETH is up 4% to 1.638. Just double checking that. Sounds high. 1.682. Okay, fine. XRP is down 3% to $2.15. Solana is up a couple of percent to $133, but that is up 30% on the week, whereas ETH is just up 12% on the week. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have Doge is flat at 16 cents. Pepe is up 3%. Trump is down 2%. Bonk is down 1%. Fartcoin is down 1%. SPX is down 4%. WIF's down 5%. Pengu is down 7%. And Popcat's down 6%. Mog is flat. Nothing really standing out here as such. All green on the week, though, remember, because a lot of things rallied last week in general. Getting into the main headlines themselves, today we have China halting shipments of several rare earth minerals to the US, and Trump and Lutnick casting doubt on tariff exemptions. Very curious for Legendary's breakdown of that there, because the market, after initially responding to that news yesterday, kind of just moves right back up. So very curious to see where you see that going. The mantra L1 for RWAs is down 80% in one day. The team has blamed the reckless forced closures initiated by centralized exchanges, but a lot of people in the timeline have come out calling this project a complete, I think they would describe it as a scam. All kinds of accusations being made. So we'll dive into what exactly is going on there, to the extent that we are even confident that we're able to do that. And then finally, Zoopepen set by Jack Butcher. This is the NFT collection, one subset of the bigger Opepen collection. This specific set has a 2.4 ETH floor. The original Opepens trade for around 0.3. So anyone who opted into the set and minted, that's like a 8x off the bat. I'll be breaking down what that means, what a bit more significance about the collection, because I think it's a good one to know about. Some notable price action in general. The prompt token by Wayfinder is up to $450 million FDV after opening under 200. We spoke about that as being a disappointing launch last week, obviously moving up to a much more respectable position. Solana is up 35% on the week versus ETH, which is up 11% on the week, versus Bitcoin, which was up 12% on the week. So again, underperformance by ETH and Bitcoin relative to Sol. I thought that was interesting to note. So wanted to bring that to people's attention. And then finally, Bitcoin staking protocol Babylon, the baby token, which we talked about last week as well, that's up 25% after the launch. So seeing a bit of a trend here of a couple of strong product and teams launching at particular prices. And then instead of the inevitable dump, which is usually what has happened over a long period of time with many teams and projects launching, they've actually been going up. So just wanting to bring that to people's attention. Maybe we'll discuss that shortly in a second as well. Legendary, that's the main headlines. Anything that we should note from the NFT side of things?
Yeah. As for the general market, it doesn't seem like a lot has happened, but actually a lot has happened, because Bored Apes are only down 0.3% over the last 24 hours. Same for Pudgy Penguins. But if you look over the last week, there's actually been a fair amount of volatility as the market went down. Bored Apes went under 14 ETH, went as low as 13.8 ETH, but are up 7.5% over the week. So the major collections in general have recovered to the levels that they've seen a bit more than a week ago. And apart from that, one mover are the meme land captains. They're up 20% over the week. They're up another 7% over the last 24 hours, currently at a 0.735 ETH floor.
Do we know what's going on with the captains there?
I don't have a clue, but they're still under mint price. And I don't know if the meme token, let's see if the meme token has moved up with that.
Usually when the NFT price itself moves up or down aggressively, the underlying, well, which one's the underlying thing now? Because the NFT came first. Usually the ERC20 also is moving in a similar direction.
Yeah, meme's up 4% over the last 7 days, but captains are up way more than that, though.
Interesting. That's interesting to know. Sometimes, obviously, you can just have a whale decide that they want to come and sweep a collection. So that could be the case, but we reserve judgment for now. Just a quick one on the other NFT side. We've been talking about it all of last week. Xcopy has been on a complete heater. There one Xcopy N, this piece that we're showing on screen, sold for 255 ETH. And Xcopy Deathless, this was an edition, one of his first Nifty Gateway editions, that sold for 40 ETH. Remember, I keep reporting on these OpenSea emails I get for people bidding on your work, and I was talking about that as an indicator of how the market, or at least for Xcopy, was kind of staying quite hot. The bids which were rolling in maybe 2 weeks ago for these Saintless editions I have were at like 1.8, 1.9, then it was 2, then 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. And those bids are now coming in at 3 ETH. And I just checked in, and there's barely any listed. So I think there's a bit of a supply crunch at the moment on Xcopy editions. So that's just for people to know. Getting into the rest of the roundup, you had the ETH Foundation co-director sharing a simplified roadmap for scaling the ETH L1. He said that they should be focused on minting assets on L1, winning the RWA battle, and winning on stables. We'd be curious for Brett's thoughts in that in just a second before we hit the main headlines. The Trump token is supposed to start unlocking around $330 million of tokens on April the 18th. So just bear that in mind. We're sharing a screen showing an image of all the various tokens that are starting to unlock this week, Trump being the one with the most value in there. And then finally, Odin Fun Bitcoin memes trading platform pauses trading and withdraws after co-founder personal account was hacked. That is quite unfortunate. I think a lot of people, I think some people's funds are kind of stuck there at the moment, which is unfortunate. So keep an eye out for when that might get switched on again, so you can take your funds out if you need to. That is the Web3 Roundup, plus the headlines, plus what's going on in the NFT side of things. Brad, I think I will guess what is intriguing you here, but is there anything catching your attention before we get to the main headlines?
Yeah, of course, it's the scaling stuff. It's the Ethereum conversation. It's the blah, 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 blah. The technical things in the face of impending doom on prices. Yeah. So I think it's a good narrative for the team. I still think it's
just tell us quickly what it was from your perspective. You're obviously a lot closer to it. I gave a quick couple of points which I thought were important there. How did you understand what this new message is for Ethereum, and what was your take on it?
I think that's not a new message. Like it's been
okay.
It's been what they've been trying to do for the last like a year, right? Like the entire thing, like the narrative between a Solana and Ethereum is that Solana's story, its roadmap, its everything is much more succinct than Ethereum's, right? So Solana has famously termed their roadmap as IBRL, right? Increased bandwidth, reduced latency. That means like make the chain faster, reduce the time you have to wait for your thing to get in, right? Big and fast. That's it. And then like, yes, there are technical underpinnings to that, but that's broadly what it's like, its value proposition, right? It's like, we're just gonna keep doing this. Whereas on the Ethereum side, you see a picture of their plurge, the scourge, the merge, the furge, the urge, right? That's their roadmap. It's a 6-year, 12,
saying making all those things that rhymed was not catchy, didn't catch on.
It's not even just that it's that, but it's like, all right, so like what's the chain supposed to do? And it's like, oh, well, it's supposed to not do anything. It's supposed to be the settlement layer of the world. Oh, it's supposed to be money. Oh, it's supposed to be ultrasound. Oh, it's supposed to be. So it's like, it's just messy. It's noisy. It's whatever. And that like is both the technical items that you like, come from the merge, splurge, gurge, dirge stuff, and it comes from the actual, like, you don't have a one-liner like that. That's the messiness of it. Right? No one knows like, why am I buying this thing? Why do I need this thing? So this was a step in that direction on the technical side, where they said like, here are a few items that we can isolate that over the next year, 2 years, we want to prioritize. And again, this is coming from the new heads of the EF. So one of them is Nethermind founder, who Nethermind is just like one of the clients. It's like you've heard a lot about Fire Dancer from Solana. Yes. Nethermind is like the team on Ethereum that is equivalent to the Fire Dancer team. They're like, okay, we make a client's a thing that just like you actually run the chain. It's like they're about performance, and like, we're just gonna hammer this shit, right? That we're very technical, we're very focused on the shit, we can deliver that stuff. Like, this is what we care about. And the other side is someone who's softer on the technical skills, and those two lead the Ethereum Foundation. And the technical guy came forward and just like, we want to scale the L1. We want to make it faster, cheaper, like bigger gas, like all this stuff. So like, that's good that I agree with that approach. I think that is the way forward. Problem is, it's going to take a while for that to actually materialize and for like the rest of the ecosystem to catch up. I actually did a quote tweet from like Ansgar. Ansgar is one of the Ethereum researchers. I met him when I was in, I think it was Thailand, whenever, like the DevCon. I met him at DevCon when I did the blob panel. He was on there with me, and so he's good. He's been like a counter trend in the Ethereum world. That's been like all L2s, all money, all whatever. He was more pushing for the, like, we should scale the L1, we should increase blob capacity, we should do this, even if it isn't feasible in the old world. And so, yeah, I quote tweeted him because he came forward and said, everyone's like, the people inside of the ecosystem are starting to coalesce around the idea that Ethereum needs to get faster. It needs to be more usable. It needs to have valuable properties. And I was like, yeah, cool. That aligns with something from September of last year that I tweeted.
Okay. Interesting stuff. I appreciate the kind of in-depth analysis there. Maybe it's just a key takeaway, 2 key takeaways. One, I like the rhyming. I think the rhyming is good. Maybe some key messages along with it. But the more important one, I think, is I've seen some sentiment on timeline. This is definitely going to catch on because I've started to feel it. And this, if you're involved in the ETH ecosystem and you're listening in, this is the real danger for ETH aligned people. I still consider myself an ETH aligned person, even though I've like got rid of a lot of the asset because it has not performed on an objective basis. The danger is people are going to start listening to this show and other shows and say, why are you talking about ETH so much? Like, what's the point? Like, it was this thing that was so incredible and had all this optimism around it and all this thing, but there's so much baggage attached to it now. And I wonder whether, and actually David from Bankless came out the other day, I think yesterday or the other day, saying like, look, this is why we pivoted. We had to pivot in order to keep the business going. We can't sustain it purely on ETH. And I think there's a lot of people who are super aligned with ETH and super interested in ETH, but there'll be a lot of newer people who don't have that ties. Like one of the reasons we have all those ties is because we came in 2021 or earlier, and it made so much more sense to us. For a lot of newer people, they'll be looking around being like, right, Solana does this, they does this better, it does this. Like, why are you guys talking about ETH all the time? I think that is the real danger people need to keep an eye on. Got to stay relevant, got to stay like, stay important to people, because I can sense that people already either have lost patience or are losing patience.
The thing that people don't want to hear is that Ethereum has delivered on the thing that it set out to do. It's just the question now is, did we misprice the future like value of the properties that it kept? Like it's that simple, right? Like, okay, cool. Like Ethereum, it did the thing that it wanted to do. And like you talking about like, oh, it's ETH or it's Ethereum, or it's whatever. Like there's like 6 lines you can draw in that conversation. Is it Ethereum, the asset price? Because a lot of it's Ethereum asset price conversation versus Ethereum, the technology, right? Ethereum, the technology is still people, because again, I'm on a team building an L2. We use Ethereum. Like, and the problem is that Ethereum, the technology, at $1,600 is about the same for us as a team utilizing Ethereum as Ethereum, the technology, at 4,000, at 10,000, at 500, right? All those things, like it preserves the same properties. Asset price matters a little bit for like security, decentralization, all that stuff. It does not matter a shit ton, right? So like that's an Ethereum problem that needs to be solved, that it's providing this service. It has these properties. Maybe we mispriced the properties.
Brett, can you speak a bit more to that? Because there's been a conversation on the timeline over the weekend that made this point. Yes, the asset price to a certain extent matters to the security. And someone was making the point, if ETH gets to a TVL of like, say, crypto is super mature, we're not at like 2 to 3 trillion market cap anymore. That's a 15 trillion industry. And there's like 5 trillion of assets worth on ETH alone, or in the ETH plus L2 ecosystem, then surely the total market cap of ETH can't be this and that because it's quote unquote not secure enough anymore in relation to the total amount secured. Does this make sense in your opinion, or is this argument lacking a bit of logic?
That conversation gets into, because what you're talking about there is economic security, right? You're saying, okay, if it has $15 billion or $15 trillion of stablecoins on Ethereum L1, and the cost to secure the chain, right, the price that ETH is, right, to take over the 51% of the stake, to actually like be able to manipulate the chain outcomes, like steal funds, double spend, all that exciting shit. Like, well, then you have to have the asset price be equivalent to the value on the chain. Otherwise, that gap becomes incentive to attack, right? What I mean by that is, like, if the asset itself, the chain itself, the economic security of the chain is $10 trillion, but there's $15 trillion worth of stablecoins on it, I have $5 trillion of incentive to attack the chain, right? Like that's the margin I could potentially, like, if I can acquire enough ETH, I can, and actually it's less than that because of whatever, but like that's my incentive to attack the chain, right? It's like I can potentially do that. That falls back to a second conversation of like, so yes, that's true, but it falls back to a second conversation of, is that even the most efficient attack vector of these chains? And the answer is no, it's not. Like, if I was going to do that, I would spend my money, much less than that, trying to insert a bug into one of the clients that runs the chain, right? Like I get in a GitHub repo of Nethermind, is the one I referred to, right? It takes up like 6% stack. Like same thing with Solana. Solana is one client, or it's a handful of clients, but it's a smaller subset of clients where one of the clients makes up the vast majority of the chain. If I was on Bitcoin Core is 98% of the clients that run the nodes that are Bitcoin. So like instead of buying a gajillion fucking miners to like try to actually attack Bitcoin, I would do my damnedest to attack the team that maintains the Bitcoin Core client and like spend not even a quarter of the amount it would take monetarily to attack the chain, to just literally attack the clients running the chain to then like take it over, right? But then there's some messiness with that, but like it gets around the conversation of is economic security a meme? Totally likes to go after that pretty heavily every time it comes up. That it's just a meme, like the securing the chain amount is a meme because the attack vectors below that are much lower when it comes to clients and like other things you can do to attack it. So yes, it makes sense. No, I don't think it's strongly held that like that logic needs to hold up.
Interesting. Very interesting conversation. We will like come back to it intermittently. My maybe concluding thought is what I just said, which is we're going to cover ETH in that way. We're also going to have to figure out ways to shine the light on some of the other ones that are absolutely gunning for its position as like the primary smart contract platform, because I've definitely noticed that and think we need to respond to that as a media company. It's like got to shine the light on whatever is doing fulfilling that job best. So we'll continue that conversation as necessary. Let's get into the main headlines though, which are quite diverse today. I like this selection. Legendary, we're going to start off with you, like we do every day at the moment with the macro stuff. What do we need to know? What is China doing? What is Trump doing? What are the team doing? And how is it affecting our cryptocurrencies?
Absolutely. The markets are up on a series of news in the US-China conflict. And let's try to break down a bit of what has been happening over the weekend. So first of all, Chinese officials have been calling for Trump to completely cancel the tariffs and to, quote unquote, return to the right path of mutual respect. And it seemed like exactly that was happening over the weekend. On Saturday, White House appeared to dial down its campaign against Beijing. They made the exemption for smartphones, which is the single biggest export from China to the US and also to the rest of the world. And they made smartphones exempt from the 145% tariffs. And there's this notice by the US Customs and Border Protection I'm sharing on the screen that is exactly stating this exemption. And European stock markets, they have bounced today. The Euro Stoxx is up 2.something%. S&P 500 is up 1.6% on the pre-market. Nasdaq is up 2% on the pre-market as well. So all seems good, but there is a big however, and this is to do with what Trump has been posting over the weekend as well on Truth Social and saying nobody is getting off the hook for the unfair trade balances and non-monetary tariff barriers that other countries have used against us, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst. And now the key point, he's saying there was no tariff, quote unquote, exception announced on Friday. These products are subject to the existing 20% fentanyl tariffs, and they're just moving to a different tariff bucket. They're also saying that, he's also saying that they're taking a look at semiconductors and the whole electronic supply chain in the upcoming national security tariff investigations. And Trump is of the opinion that they need both semiconductors as well as medicals to be produced in the US. And Secretary Howard Lutnick is basically aligning with that and is saying they will look at the semiconductor tariffs today. There's going to be some more information coming out today as to how they could look like. And Lutnick also said that this new tariff would be in addition to the other host of tariffs that have been introduced so far, but the tariffs which are currently now on a 90-day break. So I think the key takeaway is that the administration is saying we need the medicines and we need the semiconductors and electronics to be built in America. We've seen a positive reaction in the market from the exemption of smartphones, that they will be exempt from tariffs, but we will expect to have some more news later today on specific semiconductor tariffs from the US side. That's it for the US. And for the China side, something that we have reported last week has now become a reality. China has threatened to hold the export of 7 rare earth minerals to the US. And that has happened, and that is relevant because they are a key ingredient in semiconductors, in all electronics, and 70% of those rare earths are actually being mined in China. So they are sitting on the majority of the supply.
Okay. Excellent summary of some of the more political aspects. What did you think on the price action from the last few days? If you look at, I mean, I'll just bring this up here. I'm going to share my screen in just a second. If you look at Bitcoin over the last 7 days, it kind of, the reaction, okay, so broadly towards the back end of last week, this is what we saw. We saw an easing, a rhetorical easing when it came to the aggression that the US was going to be showing to the world. You obviously had the tariffs, which were delayed. It's like, look, we're going to deal with this later. We're not going to, no one's going to get hit over the head with any of the stuff immediately. And then with China, there was also this. So you basically had this easing effect that took Bitcoin back up to 85, and then yesterday. So we're talking about this as very significant news, and I appreciate that it is in practice. But the curious thing for me, which I'm looking for opinions for, although maybe I'll share mine first, is that the little dip yesterday on the news that Trump was casting doubt on top of all these things again, Ludnick and Trump. The market didn't really respond. It responded very briefly. I think Bitcoin went from 85 to 83.5. It got bought up straight away. Now it's back at 85. Legendary, do you think there's a bit of fatigue here? Do you think there's a bit of fatigue and people don't think that the worst has already been imagined and priced in, and bearing in mind that markets are forward looking, all the things which are potentially on the table are kind of priced in at this point because people are, the stock market already had its humongous move down. All of these things are kind of potentially
I'm buying.
out.
I'm starting to buy. I
you?
decided over this weekend, I'm going to start isolating a few things. I was listening to the podcast from last week, and it's just like, yeah, like unless you're trying to catch picos, like, yeah, man, like just whatever. Anytime the market moves this rapidly and your time horizon is beyond like the next week, I'm not a trader. I'm an investor. Like these are the moves that are typically going to recover. I'm isolating assets that I want to actually start spending into. I'm mad that again, hype. I've talked about it the last few weeks. Hype is one that I want to start buying into. Looking at the prices now, I can see it went below 10 for a brief moment. Now it's up to 16. Yeah, I think it's time to start DCing a little bit. At least like start deciding on assets.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying that maybe even before all of this stuff, right? Hype at $12 and $13 better than at 30. Bitcoin at 80 better than at 108. So curious, what are there anything in particular you're looking at, Brett? I know you mentioned hype in particular. You wanted to kind of get some exposure to. Anything else?
No, I haven't really like determined all my entire list. Hype is just because I have exposure like throughout the rest of the ecosystem already. Like a lot of my
You can say Fartcoin. It's a high market cap now. So you wouldn't be pumping it, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm doing no memes. I'm trying to decide like which ones I want to just like you do the like post-coital review. It's just like you have clear head, like just like what the fuck is going on. I have the clear eyes now that I can look at my portfolio, and I just need to start getting rid of some stuff and return to God on on a few things. So
okay.
Yeah,
interesting. I want to go to Funky, then I'm going to come back to you, Legendary, for the same question. Funky, welcome to the stage, my man. What are your thoughts here on the market's response? I feel like it was kind of muted, right, against the backdrop of increased doubt, increased uncertainty. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I think that the market is just getting over Trump whipsawing things up and down. Maybe it's going to be less of the quote unquote Trump market, right? So I think that that's a good sign, honestly. And because the market is forward looking, I think a lot of this has been priced in, and everybody's just generally expecting up. I mean, just China's rhetoric, I think, seems like they're really trying not to cave, and they're eventually going to have to bend the knee. Obviously, you look at some of the data that Hayes has been pointing out. They're going to have to devalue the yuan. all of these other things are just going to have a cascading effect that's going to, and we already know global liquidity is up. I mean, honestly, I just found out that my taxes were done from my accountant and somehow miraculously are getting a refund. And so immediately I took a bunch of cash that I've been sitting on. And of course, I bought more Bitcoin because, like you said, it's better to get it. And I bought it at 85. And I didn't think there was going to be a dip. And there was a dip. And I was like, dang, could have had a little bit more sats. But, I really think that everybody's just ready for back to up only.
Okay, interesting. Appreciate those thoughts, Funky mentioned something there about the money supply, and I guess one of the reasons why people are thinking that this is all pointing toward. Can you explain maybe why people think it's just return to up only because of some of this stuff? There's obviously the money supply point. Is there anything else that people should keep in mind, or why they think this is all ultimately very inflationary and therefore good for risk assets?
Yeah, I think the other thing to keep a look at is the 10-year yield, which is something that also the administration is looking at, obviously, because this is the yield where debt will be refinanced at later this year. And this is now sitting at 4.43%. So this is still pretty high. And I personally think that we need to see that figure come down a bit more before the market goes back into up only mode. I will take the other side of this. I don't think we are back in up only mode. So I will have a hard time to basically explain that, because if you take a look at the fear and greed index, for example, we are still at 18 at extreme fear. A month ago, that's been at extreme fear, but at 22. Yes, a week ago, extreme fear was down to 4. So the extreme fear was even worse than it's right now. But I do think that on the one hand, the stock markets did not trade over the weekend, and BTC, yes, it had its one exception where it was holding up for one day and it's been fighting a tough fight. And then the stock market, after it gave in, BTC followed along. So I feel like the one thing is that we just didn't have stocks trading over the weekend. We have the pre-markets being up because maybe the expectation is not that we are over Trump, but it's more this. So the general tariff level is at 145%. And even if Trump is going to announce a semiconductor tariff today, I feel like that the market is hoping that whatever this tariff is going to be, if it's lower than 145%, basically, it's still a better situation than it's been a week before. And if this is in the same bucket as the other tariffs, then that, to my understanding, would mean that it is in that bucket that is in the 90-day break. So it wouldn't be effective immediately. This is my read of the situation. I feel like that this has to be the read of the market as well, because otherwise I would have a hard time seeing the markets being up 2%. But I just think the situation now for the markets is better than it's been last week. I don't think that the market got fed up with or got bored of the volatility of Trump's going back and forth on the tariffs, because if a significant news comes out of that and the sentiment is still in extreme fear, my hypothesis would be that the market reaction would still be a very strong one.
Okay, I like it. I'm wondering, this is my thought. I'm wondering if it's as simple or rudimentary as, remember, cast your minds back to November, December last year, and we were on this show talking about how things are playing out with regards to the election and the inauguration. And remember, if you were listening to us back then, we were saying, in our opinion, you've got like a few months here. You've got a few months to just like absolutely swing at stuff. I remember the specific show in November where I think we were almost in a bit of a mania, just saying like, right, if you want to play, now's time to play. Play now. If you want to roll the dice, it's time to roll the dice. It's going to be risky, but that was the time. And we spoke a lot about how the inauguration date would be this day, which would be super important, a potential moment for reality to start to set in after that. Because if you think of just the psychology of everything going on with everything to do with a new person coming to power, there's all of this hope, all of this expectation, all of everything. And the reality is often less impressive than all the hope and expectation that you kind of whip yourself up into believing prior. I think that's kind of what we spoke about back then. I mean, this reality that's actually played out post-inauguration, I don't think anyone would have specifically expected. But my point of going into that when thinking about the inauguration date is because my next thought is, I wonder if it's as simple as, look, inauguration date was like this key date before. Now, one of the key distinctions between China and the States is that China don't have midterms. Like they don't have a date by which this stuff needs to necessarily be fixed. Whereas Trump will have that. That will be something in his mind where they will want to have a better showing by that particular time. And I wonder whether people are getting a little bit impatient. Yes, okay, maybe the money supply will go up. Yes, things are about to break. I don't know if you go past all-time high as soon as possible, but my instinct would be in the same way that we thought the inauguration was like this important date back then, purely on a kind of psychological basis. I think the midterms are going to become that same thing. So it's pushing it a bit further out than people would like. But I think some of this indecision and some of this messing around is probably attached to them thinking that they've got this bit of time to mess around. And look, the other key thing I wanted to say, so that's point one in terms of timeframes. Point two is on the deficit and attached to liquidity. Everyone always thought that this was going to be the administration that were going to cut costs. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't think Doge has made the number of cuts that they maybe that they would have liked to do. And in addition, we spoke about this on Friday, Legendary. I think the military budget, the defense budget, I believe, is a record ask at $1 trillion. And I haven't gone in and kind of looked at this stuff line by line, but my understanding is that these really are no less than anything that anyone else has asked before, if not more. And so if that is the case, that's just like double confirmation of essentially what Funky is alluding to, moving into, again, a more inflationary environment. There will be no curb on this spending. That is not going to be the inevitable outcome. There will be no curb. And therefore, you do go into this kind of increased liquidity environment, and, risk assets become more valuable over time as well. Those are my two thoughts. Curious for your thoughts. Funky's got his hand raised, so I'll go straight to him, then check in with both you guys for your reflections there. Then definitely want to get into the second headline as well, but I think this is an interesting convo. Funky, respond, please.
Yeah, both parties. It doesn't matter what they claim. They love spending. They're addicted to it. Nothing's ever going to change. If it were Democrats, if Harris had won, it would just be on social programs and that kind of thing. And with Republicans coming in, military is always going to be a top thing. That's just not surprising in the least. There's also more Trump tax cuts, which I think are an extension of the tax cuts that he enabled in his first term, which is more spending. Again, all this just leads to inflation. All this leads to money printing. All this leads to number go up.
Okay. Very nicely, succinctly put. Brett, Legendary, any final takes here before we keep it moving?
I think both of those lines of thoughts can be united. Like, I generally agree with Funky in the long run that number will go up, and this will lead to number go up. But I think in the short term, there's still going to be a bit more volatility. And just to clarify a bit more on the Pentagon spending, 2024, it's been 850 bill. That was up only 2.3% versus 2023. So that alleged 150 billion increase to hit a full trillion is significant if you even, not only in absolute numbers, but also at the relative increase if you look at how it has been increasing the years before that.
Okay. Nice additional piece of context, Brad. Close us off.
I'm just going to extend Legendary. So I don't think volatility in a Trump admin is a short-term thing. So it's like, for me, I think it will be up, but it will be a very staggered up over the next few years, right? So that means we're gonna have stuff like this where, like, oh, everything is ripping, and maybe you want to turn that into cash because this man is probably going to do something that is going to spook the markets in some capacity. That's going to rug everyone for, a 3 to 6 month window, and then you're going to have to do it again. So I think I'm going to try to make sure that I'm in a position that whenever things feel like they're ripping and they get euphoric, maybe less euphoric than standard, like just straight up to the right bull markets, and just sell that, sit on cash whenever I can, or maybe just have a higher cash stockpile continuously, and then just be ready to catch like these one-off rippers to the downside that he is inevitably going to create because of stuff like this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Just one final thing before we move on, checking in with the YouTube comments who've been on fire today as well. English is thinking, pump into May, then the markets do what they do in the summer, make some good travel and fitness plans for the summer. Overarch is saying, I like that approach English, but I'd be wary of selling anything before this QE cycle is over. Could be very much higher in Q4. I'm aiming for it in November.
My one point on this, again, we want to get to the final headline because it's an interesting one. Brett's going to break down all this mantra drama. My one observation of people's takes on this is whenever things are bad, they just think they just want to extend it like one quarter. And it's like, oh, but it'll be okay by the end of the year and it's going to be okay. And that's like an observation that I've noticed in this space in general. It's like, okay, well, we're coming into the summer, but then by September, it's going to be fine. And I don't know, my view is that it's never that. It's either going to be better sooner and it's going to take you by surprise, or it's just going to be a bit longer. Like, that's not a particularly scientific perspective, but I've just noticed that people really want it to be September. Like, people really want it to be September, right? Because we're coming into the summer. Like, can this please be all better by September? Probably that gives these guys a few months to mess around and do whatever they're doing. But by September, it's going to be okay. It's like, I don't know, guys. Global trade war with the biggest trading partner as the US dollar is becoming, losing its relevancy and losing its status as the reserve currency. Like, might not be better by September for a variety of reasons. So yeah, just wanted to articulate that as an additional thought. But Brad, unless you've got anything else to say on that one, would love for you to get into this mantra L1 drama, down 80% on the day. What is going on with this blockchain?
Yeah, you basically ripped off the headline there. It's the token OM went down actually closer to 90% in a single candle over the weekend. People were scrambling to figure out what the hell was going on here. And we have three pieces of information to go on. So you're showing there that was down 9% from 5.9 billion to a 500 million market cap in a single candle. JP Mullins came out, who is the founder of Mantra, came out shortly after and said, they've determined that the OM market movements were triggered by reckless forced closures initiated by centralized exchanges, saying it was outside of their hands and that all of the investors had not done anything. And then outside of that, it's just hearsay. And one of the strongest pieces of hearsay come from our very own Funky. So I'm reading from his stuff here, but OM, or not OM, but OM, the token, Mantra, the chain was actually launched from Polkastarter, which is not affiliated with Polkadot. It was actually a launch pad back in the day. And that was a lot of the consternation around the actual launch of it, is that there was no affiliation. And yet they were leeching off the brand equity of Polkadot to have projects launch that quickly went to zero. And Funky called out specifically that there's only 4 million of TVL on this chain, even though the valuations were in the multiples of billions, which is quite a lot. And notably for me, is that there was no one inside of the ecosystem that was actually like aware of using and or like really familiar with the underlying of the chain itself. I think we see that a lot in this ecosystem where, we feel like we're pretty plugged in. And whenever you see a project kind of rip out of nowhere to do stuff and you're like, no one uses this, I don't hear anyone talking about this, this is surprising to me, you let yourself get bought into it a little bit, that like, oh, well, they just must be doing something that I'm not aware of. And then ultimately it rugs and it goes to zero because, like, yes, obviously it was kind of a scam. So it's like, it feels like this was a cut from the same cloth as a lot of these projects across all of these ecosystems, but this one specifically was isolated to the Polkadot ecosystem.
Very interesting. So there's been all kinds of consternation about this on the timeline. I'm just trying to share my screen. Ledge, if we can switch it over. Look at this chart. Brett, do you remember this? This was the chart once I brought up to you on the show, and I said, all these tokens are going down. They're all terrible. They're all launching. They're all going down to zero. And I brought this chart up, and you were like, "What the hell is this? I've never heard of it." Because before this moment, if you look at the chart, if you cut it off here where I'm showing on the screen, but at the point it was like $8, which is probably like an $8 billion FDV. So the FDV even now is still 1.3 bill. Like right now, after this 80% move down. So if you looked at it around 8, this is a pretty tasty chart from October 2023 onwards. From the bull market kind of onwards, from the start of 2024, it just kind of moved up really steadily. And then every now and again, there'd just be these colossal pumps of like, more than doubling the price sometimes in one go. Moved up from 150 to 3. Moved
Yeah,
up
you saw
from
a lot of commentary on that. It's just like, oh, whoever their market maker is just crushing. It's like the painting a chart, creating a chart, painting, bullishness into the thing. Like this is some people would say this is not organic. You can see repeated moves in like low liquidity environments where it's like, okay, you can see quick buy over a certain time period and then steadily sets at this price, and then quick buy to move it up another, couple bill or a bill in FDV. So it's just like repeated movements, and people would say that's professional. That's professional action. That's not organic growth, and that's part of the crime that everyone's alluding to.
And this is what makes it so hard, right? Like, I want to, Funky, I see your hand raised, want to come to you in a second. Just want to share this tweet from, I believe this is someone who works at Athena, but it was commenting on just the general difficulty that any crypto participant has when trying to navigate the liquid crypto market. I'm going to share this tweet, Ledge. I'm showing it, then want to come to you for your thoughts as well. Just saying that everything in the crypto complex is designed to screw public markets and retail over. Price appreciation is captured in private rounds before that even happens. Then there's this immature listing process at arbitrary prices. Then you have these opaque OTC deals and bilateral agreements to manipulate prices. Inside information passed between participants. I saw someone sharing a screenshot, for example, of a Mantra OTC deal that was being offered out. And so obviously, if you know that these OTC deals are taking place, you know what the real value of the token is and who's buying and how much and when. And the public price is almost just a facade. It's just like this thing that is put on show for people, when really there are people buying the tokens on a private level at a different price, probably with some different vesting schedule now. And then they get a chance to sell it later. That's how it works. So I think this post was just kind of articulating that, how poorly this has worked out for retail. But actually even saying, going further to say, it's hard to feel bad for most involved. Everyone knows the game that they're playing. However, it's difficult to imagine anything changes because, I guess there's a lot of incentives involved to keep the system going in some respect. Funky, curious for your thoughts here. Is this just going to continue and other participants need to be way more clued up on these background deals that can be taking place? What's the way forward here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised people have already started to try and buy back in. I was listening to Mario Nawfal's space yesterday afternoon, and I was trying to get up on stage because Rand Newer is up there, and he's like, I know the team, they're not scammers, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, you're a scammer. Like, this is crazy to me that people are out there trying to get them to invest in this thing after that monumental collapse. David and I, KBL, like a year ago, about like last spring, we're like, why is Ohm pumping? Because we knew the history of this thing being a polka starter scam project. Even my friends in Cosmos, because it eventually became a Cosmos chain, they thought it was a Cosmos project. I'm like, no. This thing has roots that are rotten to the core, that go way, way back to years ago. Look at the polls chart, POLS, right? You can see it starts in like very end of 2020, early 21, pumps like crazy, because the way the Ponzi worked was the more polls you held, the bigger like tier you could get in terms of buying into these projects, and the cheaper the price became. And there were a lot of people at the time, Spectre Group and some others, that were like shilling these projects because Polkadot was launching later that year in 21. And they're saying like, oh, these are early Polkadot projects. They had nothing to do. They were all ERC20s. They were just pump and dumps. And I remember seeing it, and Dave and I, like a year ago, last March, April, were like, why is Ohm all of a sudden just ripping? And so then I heard rumors of the market makers, some shady dudes in like the Middle East that were putting in capital. The team apparently had like 90% of the tokens. Apparently the way that they were creating these pumps too was because there was such a low float and they held most of the tokens. People were seeing this, right? So other people are going to take the other side of the trade. They're going to try and short it. Well, then they start and short it, but there's no tokens really to sell to these buyers. So then they end up just like, the market maker pumps and they destroy the shorts. And so then that gives it more juice. So the whole thing was a scam. And I feel bad for not trying to warn people about it ahead of time, because I mean, this thing from the jump has always been a scam. I don't care what anybody says.
Interesting. Appreciate the additional insights, Funk. Maybe interestingly, maybe one of the reasons why we spoke to the founder of Ethos earlier. I can completely understand why a lot of people just don't know that history, right? Crypto's history is pretty opaque, even for people. You can spin up different accounts, but there'll always be someone who knows the real history of things. And with Ethos, you can maybe they're starting to roll out, or I think they already have rolled out the ability for people to review entities, whether that's protocols, whether that's the modern market. You can go and leave a review for us on there as well. Like you can go and review corporations as well, which might be super helpful for people who have the knowledge on people's history, which you just can't pick up from the timeline because it just disappears ASAP. Any negative comment you want to leave for someone. So that's just one thought, the direction I was going to go in. But Legendary, I know you want to come in. We've run out of time today, so just close us off with a final thought on this investing saga.
Yeah, I think Ethos is even working on a feature that's going to allow you to view a history of a fund and see what they have been working on and what they worked on in the past. Just one more update because Cointelegraph posted it on the investor side of things. Mantra investors deny dumping OM before the crash, despite on-chain data showing $227 million in OM moved to exchanges ahead of the collapse. And I think that is kind of the challenge that we see. Like everything on blockchain is transparent, sure, but like if you have intentions that are not the best, or if you have outright fraudulent intentions in your mind, then there's so many ways to add layers and layers of opacity to that, whether that's the OTC deals, whether that's market maker deals that nobody really understands, whether that's obfuscating funds, obfuscating who's holding what. So that's, I think, gonna continue to be a massive, massive challenge in the space. And I also think it's good that we're trying to attack it from different angles, and Ethos being one of them. Also, like the public reporting, the timeline covering things being another one. But ultimately, as you said, like the suspicion, and Brett put that beautifully, starts to arise then when nobody in your peer group knows that thing, and it suddenly is up to $16 billion FTV, $8 billion market cap. Then that's probably a good time to be suspicious of it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes sense. I mean, just a word on these types of accusations and stories. It's very new. Some of us here have more knowledge than others, and that's helpful. But in the end, without full investigation, it's almost impossible to say with any 100% certainty what has happened. So this is just the research and opinions of the people here, but that's by no means a guarantee on any of this stuff. It's fairly complicated, and as you said, there's a lot of opaque stuff where you can kind of start to form your own conclusions, but kind of have to stop short of being concrete in precisely what happened. We've shared up to our best of our knowledge what we thought was the main issues, and we don't have time for the final headline today because we run over time, but we hope the general conversation today was interesting. As always, we dealt with all of the Trump saga. With the tariffs, we talked about Mantra 2. I think those are the two main things. The final thing was the Jack Butcher OPEPN set Zoo PEPN, which has a 2.4 ETH floor. The normal OPEPNs cost 0.3 ETH. That's a pretty nice win for the NFT community, NFT universe. So that was the final thing. If you haven't checked out that collection, I would highly recommend it. I'm a big fan in general there. But that's the end of the show today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we run this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X Video, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and maybe somewhere else soon as well, but just there for now. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.